Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to paint this watercolour landscape. This is actually the fourth painting as part of my watercolour landscape painting series, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check that out. And let's get straight to the video. So to begin with for this tutorial, I wanted to focus on adding in all the bushes that are at the forefront, in front of that mountain and the sky. So I mixed three colours for this. I created a nice dark brown with a little bit of green. I mixed the same colours but then added more green, so you had more of an earth green tone in comparison to the warm brown that we have. And I also mixed a little bit of red and brown and the green, so you had the warmth coming through from the red but still consistent with the colours. All I did was go in and follow the outline that I'd created and added some dots across the whole of the page. I followed the reference photo very carefully though, as I wanted to make sure I got all of the dots in the right places. So I started with that earth on the right hand side, added a few little dots there, and then worked my way over to the left. I would say there's a little bit more green on the left hand side and more of the red tones on the right. So I wanted to make sure I got a little bit of that in, but where it gets really dark in the reference photo, I actually left these bare to begin with, so I went in later and really darkened them up. Then I went in with the red. I didn't allow any drying time for the green, and I just went in and did the exact same thing with the dots, following the outline that I'd created. So if there's anywhere where it gets really dark in the reference photo, there's a couple of little dark lines where natural shadows have been casted. So I'd go in, paint all of that red section and add a little bit of brown to show maybe the separation lines where that shadow falls. But I went in with that red across all of the page and then went in with the brown and did the exact same thing, adding in the shadows. With the brown, I wasn't too conscious about keeping the dots really small though, as if you look at the reference photo where this brown is, where it gets really dark, you can't even see where the dots fall because it is so dark. So I wasn't too worried about keeping these as small as I did for the rest of the painting. The rest of the painting, you want them dots really small to be able to see exactly where all the detail is. The small dots help to replicate that rather than bigger dots and making everything a little bit less detailed. So with the brown I wasn't too conscious, but with the red and the green I made sure I got them in really tiny to begin with and then filled in the rest of that negative space with colour. So once I'd gone into all of the brown sections, I then went back to the other two colours, the red and the green, actually even a little bit of the brown in there, but I wanted to fill in the rest of the space. So as we've added them small dots to begin with, that natural drying time has occurred, and then you can go in with the colours over them sections and it's not going to all merge together. You're going to be able to distinctly see each individual dot and how they overlap and how they contrast. If you went in with the green and red, they're going to contrast really nicely, but because the colours are quite similar, we've added a little bit of the green and brown, for example, to the red. It's not going to look too messy and too unrealistic. You are still going to be able to tell that these are bushes and all merged together whilst distinctly seeing all of that detail. You really want to make sure you fill in all of that negative space. So going back in with the colours, the perfect way to achieve this. So now I'm going to go in with a really dark brown. To create this brown, I mixed brown with a hint of blue just to make it really cold and as dark as possible. As you can see, it's a lot darker than that first brown that I pre-mixed, just with that blue adding to the cold feel. And I went in and really emphasised where the shadows were. So down towards the bottom in the middle of the page where that dark brown is from before, I went in with this even darker brown and really emphasised all these little dark areas. And it's super simple. Again, you don't need to use really small dots like you did for the rest of this section because it's so dark, and it really is just emphasising all the dark areas that's already been mapped in. Then I created a really pale blue. I mixed some blue with a little bit of that dark brown just to have it more balanced in terms of the colour. I didn't want it to be too vibrant, so that brown's going to really help with that. And I really made sure to water it down to get it as light as possible and began painting in that mountain. If you look at the reference photo, you notice that there's the little section between the mountain and the bushes. I'm avoiding that section for now and just focusing on putting in the dark part of the mountain. And I started at the bottom of the mountain and worked my way up with small little lines to replicate the rigid rocks that you can see in the reference photo that really helped to tie all the mountain together. You can see all the highlights at the top, so I avoided a lot of that section. Most of the lines were on the right hand side, as I'm guessing the light is coming from the left and casting natural shadow onto the right. So I made sure to get that in there, and it was super simple. And then of course I let this dry, and then once I was happy with this, I used the exact same colour to add in the water on the bottom of the page using the wet in wet method. So I added a layer of water down and then went in with this colour, dotted it down, and used vertical strokes with my paintbrush, a bigger paintbrush as well, as it's faster to get the paint down in a big section like this, and added all of that blue down. I bled out some dots on all of the edges so you have that natural bleed out. I didn't want there to be the washi tape line that I usually use, as I haven't for the rest of the painting series, so I wanted to keep that quite consistent. But yeah, all the little dots bleeding out, and I think it really helps create that whimsical feel. I then used the dark brown that we used in the bushes to add in some of the shadows into that water section. If you look at the reference photo, you may notice that there is that symmetry between the bushes and the water, as still water has a natural reflection a lot of the time. So it was nice to be able to get that in there, and it really helped bring this piece to life in my opinion. Then once I was happy with this, I went in with that blue again and added in that section between the bushes and the mountain that I just mentioned, and I added a little bit more of that dark brown to this blue just to darken it up in comparison to the mountain, so you can really see that separation. And because I've allowed some drying time, that dark browny blue shouldn't bleed into the mountain. You want to make sure that the mountain is dry before you do this, and also the bushes, so that everything is very separate. That is definitely the aim for this part of the painting. I of course went in again with some water around all of the edges surrounding the bushes, and made sure to add a few dots of all of that colour we used for the bushes and the mountains to blend that out, just to keep everything really consistent. And then to finish, I went in and painted the sky using the wet in wet method, the same way that I did for the water. This time I used a little bit of a lighter blue, so I didn't add any brown to it, just so it was more on that vibrant side. I did the same thing though with the blend out, adding a few little dots. I actually added a few dots of the other blue that I used for the sea as well. Really wanted that different combination of that blend out. But all of the sky section towards the middle of the page, very much the same, with the paint strokes going vertically across the paper so that it was really smooth. And then to finish, I went in with some yellow, painted in a little bit of that sand just below the bushes, and I went back in with that dark brown that we used for the bushes to further add to that symmetry. I wanted to darken it a little bit more, and because the paper's dried a little bit now, it meant that I could blend it out just that little bit more and not have to worry about everything bleeding out too much. I did blend out all of the edges though with a little bit of water, but this is a more controlled way of doing it instead of going in straight after the wet in wet method. Made sure to tidy everything up, and this painting was super simple, and as you can see, here is the finished piece. I really hope you've all enjoyed this painting series so far. If you haven't seen the rest of the videos, make sure you check them out over on my channel. And don't forget to let me know how you found this video today down below in the comments. You can also like and subscribe for future nature art content. I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys!